Doom, the mother of all 90s FPS games. While it wasn't the first, it's arguably the best when it comes to the pseudo 3D era. If I was stuck on an abandoned island and could only have one game, it would be Doom. It was evil, it was violent, and it was almost bordering on scary at specific times for my childhood. It caused a lot of controversy, but the controversies actually did the game a favour in a way, although not all publicity is good publicity, which I'll get into later. The company behind the game, id Software, was founded by John Carmack, John Romero, Adrian Carmack, and a game designer named Tom Hall. Before working on Doom, they'd found success with a similar title called Wolfenstein 3D back in 1992, and while Wolfenstein was an FPS game, it was a very different one. The level layouts were almost maze-like, very simplistic, and it had a much more jovial atmosphere. And while I would love to talk about Wolfenstein, I would rather save it for a different video. Doom came out for MS-DOS in 1993 and was published by GT Interactive. It was later ported to pretty much every system imaginable, and has since been made to run on even a calculator of all things. An updated version of the game, which is the version that I played, was called Ultimate Doom. It came out in 1995 and had an extra episode named Thy Flesh Consumed. Doom was initially sold via mail order, and had extreme success in its shareware version. I remember all of my friends seemed to have had a shareware copy of Doom installed on at least one of their home computers. Whilst Wolfenstein was set in a Nazi castle, Doom's first episode was set in a Mars base, whilst the episodes after it became more hellish and demonic in aesthetic. The game almost didn't need a story, but I'm glad we were provided with one anyway. The music for the game is the first thing that stood out for me when I first played it. It felt like the composer took major inspiration from a lot of the metal bands at the time. I can hear instances that sound like Pantera, a drum section that seemed like it was sampled from Dave Lombardo, and a few references to Metallica to name a few. But it's all in glorious MIDI. Every version of the game had vastly different sound technology. There was even a port of the game that had no music at all. And the PS1 port of the game had a more atmospheric soundtrack that had a more Quake-ish feel to it. The sound effects are all extremely memorable, from the firing of a rocket launcher to the pig-like noises that come from the Pinky Demon. It was all brilliant. The game had a small arsenal of weapons, starting with the fists and a pistol, moving to a chainsaw and a shotgun, and then eventually picking up powerhouses like a chain gun and plasma rifle and a rocket launcher. But none of these were anything special when compared to the game's ultimate powerhouse known as the BFG 9000, which could clear an entire room with a single shot, which is handy when the game's enemies happen to be demons and possessed humans. And when you got sick of killing the same old enemies, Doom had you covered, as it was also the game that popularized online deathmatches. While it wouldn't be perfected until Quake, it was still there. Some source ports of the game still have thriving online deathmatch communities. When I was a kid, I remember Doom scaring the pants off me at some times. Whether it be the monster closets, the lights going out, you know, the works. Doom used to keep me on edge for the length of my playtime. I actually used to create WODs for the game, which was a file format for modification packages that included player created levels and other content. It had a massive modding community and I loved it, but not everything was as pleasant as everyone had hoped it would be, and that's where the controversy kicks in. On April 20th, 1999, at Columbine High School, 2 men entered the building, shooting and killing 12 students and injuring 21. Their names were Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. What does this have to do with Doom? Well, apparently Eric Harris made a mock-up of their school, using the Doom modding tools and used it to train for their massacre. While the file was uploaded to the internet at some point, it wasn't archived very well and has since been lost, but he did end up making numerous maps for the game, which weren't actually any good to be honest. Harris once wrote in his journal, "This will be like playing Doom," and that it would be straight out of the game. Some of the levels he made are still available online under the name The Harris Levels, but I honestly wouldn't recommend searching for them as they aren't really anything special. Oddly enough, a lot of the controversy only made people more curious about the game, resulting in over 1.1 million copies of the game being sold as of 1999. For some reason, I've always found that the concept of evil and good to be fascinating. So when I discovered Doom, it was like a perfect union of gore and satanic imagery, which definitely affected my taste in games afterwards, later being into games like Quake and Unreal. I remember being forced to go to a church youth group back in 2004. The speaker spent 20 minutes talking about how bad Doom was, and how satanic metal music was, which, as you might have guessed, just made me go even further into both of those things. Oddly enough, I play guitar and sing in a metal band, so they really didn't do their job very well. GameSpy gave Doom the #1 spot on their list of top 50 games of all time, and I remember the guys from Screw Attack also had many good things to say about it. But is it my favourite game of all time? Well, I've played it more than any other game I've ever owned, and it has never become boring for me, even after being out for over 2 decades. So I'll leave you guys to do the guesswork. If any of you have fond memories of Doom, please leave a comment, as I would love to hear from you guys. This has been Mimic, and I'll see you guys real soon, yeah? Thanks for watching my video on Doom. I know it's different from the content that I normally post, but it's still a fairly dark game, so we aren't straying too far off the spook path. If you loved the video, hit like and subscribe. Hopefully it won't take me another 5 months to get off my lazy ass and write the script for another video. If you guys have any suggestions for what my next video should be, leave a comment, as I read pretty much every one I get. I'll see you guys later.